The central political reality of Afghanistan for the president who takes the oath of office next year is going to be the reality of the looming 2014 deadline for handing off lead security responsibility to the Afghans. By the time the president takes the oath of office, there are going to be very few degrees of freedom left for fundamentally changing the military situation on the ground between the oath of office and that deadline. And I suspect that the way that reality is going to look come Inauguration Day is like a looming stalemate, in which the military resources available in the theater at the time probably aren't going to be sufficient to do more than to hand over a situation in which Afghan national security forces can hold what's been taken, but important military problems remain unsolved, and they're probably going to have a very hard time expanding the Afghan government's region of control beyond whatever it is when they are in fact given responsibility, and that whatever is likely to be incomplete. That situation, likely stalemate in the post-2014 environment, is going to pose a couple of important political dilemmas to the administration. One of those is going to be, the plan so far has been that we are going to enable a very large Afghan national security force to wage to a successful conclusion a post-2014 war in Afghanistan on their own, in part because U.S. taxpayers and others are going to pay the bill for maintaining that large Afghan national security force. Now, if the bill that we're paying is to provide an Afghan military that can reasonably soon drive the war to a military success and enable itself then to be demobilized, then you could imagine the Congress being willing to pay a bill that might be somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $10 billion a year, as long as the Afghan military needs to be that large. On the other hand, if it looks like what we're asking them to do is wage a permanent, perpetual, indefinite stalemate, it's very hard to imagine the U.S. Congress writing $5 to $10 billion a year checks for as long as that's going to require. That's going to create a serious danger that we will not, in fact, have at our disposal a military solution to the conflict. That raises the second big political dilemma, which is what's likely to be increasing pressure to make concessions to the Taliban as part and parcel of a negotiated settlement process that's designed to produce an end to the war without necessarily defeating the Taliban militarily in the conflict. That process of making concessions and bargaining with an enemy as evil as the Taliban is going to be a very tall political order, both in Afghanistan for President Karzai and his successor, and in the United States.